Hello from Father Ivano, from Spiritual Seeds. This evening, the sun is still bright, is the vigil of Pentecost, the 50th day of Easter. Instead of the Gospel, normally I proclaim the Gospel, I would like to read the text of the Acts of the Apostles that describes in great detail that day, the day of Pentecost. From the Acts of the Apostles. When Pentecost Day came round, the apostles had all met in one room, when suddenly they heard what sounded like a powerful wind from heaven, the noise of which filled the entire house in which they were sitting. And something appeared to them that seemed like tongues of fire. These separated and came to rest on the head of each of them. They were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak foreign languages as the Spirit gave them the gift of speech. Now there were devout men living in Jerusalem from every nation under heaven. And at this sound they all assembled, each one bewildered, to hear these men speaking his own language. They were amazed and astonished. Surely, they said, all these men speaking are Galileans. How does it happen that each of us hears them in his own native language? Parthians, Medes, and Elamites, people from Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt, and the parts of Libya round Cyrene, as well as visitors from Rome, Jews and proselytes alike, Cretans and Arabs. We hear them preaching in our own language about the marvels of God. The word of the Lord. This is the account of Pentecost. What I want to say is very simple, is that there are two parts in this account, clearly divided, and both of them important for you and for me. The first part, you can say, is almost like a vertical dimension. There is something from heaven that comes down. And the second part is more horizontal, with all these different people, all these different nations. In fact, the description of Luke describes all these different people starting from the east to the west. From Parthians, these are Persians, to Arabs, from one side of the world to the extreme side of the world. Every nation under heaven. And among these people, it's you. This word is not an account of what happened 2,000 years ago. This account is about me and you. We are part of these peoples. I am Italian, in one way. I'm under this spectrum. And you are inside the spectrum. That is the place where the Holy Spirit comes down and does something. What does the Holy Spirit do? Is that these people, each one of them, hears the apostles speaking in their own, literally, dialect, in their own native language. What does it mean? It means that the Holy Spirit speaks to you in your own dialect. What is the dialect? In Greek, the word dialect means the language of your origins, basically the language of your mother, the language of your childhood, the language of your history. That is, the Holy Spirit speaks to you in your own language. That is, the Holy Spirit speaks to you with reference to do with your own life. He speaks to you about your mother, about your father, about your brother and sisters, about your childhood, about your school time, about your life, where you come from, your family, your country, your history. The Holy Spirit is not an abstract. The Holy Spirit speaks in your history. And what does it say? The marvels of God. In Greek, megalelia, that is the great actions of God. Starting from the fact that the hand of God entered Egypt and liberated the people and opened the sea and fed with the manna and fed with the water from the rock and crushed the 7 nations and carried the people on eagle's wings to give them life. This is what is this feast about. This feast is about your history, my history. You know my accent. I have a dialect. I have a history. I have a family. I have my own wounds. I have a history. And in that history, the Holy Spirit comes. And what he announces is that this history is a history of salvation. That your history is a salvation. That God enters our history, reconciles us with our mother, with our father, heals our wounds, strengthens our weaknesses, makes us grow in faith, feeds us when there is in providence, and gives us a land that we haven't deserved, that we eat from fruits we have not planted, we drink from grapes we have not produced. This is the history of salvation, and this is the beauty of this feast. Your history, your dialect, and the Holy Spirit. And the two come together to make of your history a history of salvation, of your dialect, a dialect that can say how God has been good to you. Speak your dialect, and tell in your own dialect how much God has loved you. Happy Pentecost. God bless.